The dark and mysterious fascinates us all. One way we can live these scary, spellbinding tales is by watching movies from the comfort of our own home or at the cinema. The horror genre since its birth has spawned a substantial number of movies, a vast majority of them bad.
Really bad.
But that doesn't mean that there weren't any that thrusted the genre to new heights, giving us some of the best stories in cinema. Well everyone, it's finally spooky season and who doesn't love getting scared? Without further ado, here are the uninspired reviewers' top 10 horror films for Halloween. On Halloween night, 6 college friends decide to go into an extreme haunted house, promising them the scare of a lifetime. Everything goes well until they find out the masked actors are actual murderers. Haunt really is the stereotypical, the killers in the haunted house were real, but it's able to deliver a unique spin on the premise, not only through atmosphere, as it is a beautifully shot film, with the direction to match, but the story is actually quite entertaining and doesn't play out how you'd expect. Albeit, even though some of the characters remain stereotypes, it still manages to revitalize this subgenre of horror, adding a small dose of creativity to the beloved slasher. The performances are pretty decent for the material, and the film also boasts some really gory practical effects. It's a basic premise done right, giving horror fans exactly what they wanted, an enjoyable slasher flick.
You wanna see my face?
In a small Oregon town, the local sheriff and a school teacher try helping a young student they think is suffering abuse at home. They end up stumbling on something even more sinister, putting all their lives in danger. Antlers is a mystery that uses its outdoor setting and atmosphere to elevate tension in a very interesting way. The film has amazing visual filmmaking, which helps its lack of depth in the script, not entirely managing to juggle the themes presented, although I do think the film deserves praise for its clever use of horror, not solely relying on jump scares, but well-crafted anxiety-inducing scenes and some gruesome body horror, making for an intriguing creature feature with surprisingly good performances from the 2 leads and talented child actor. It is a bit of a depressing ride due to its focus on abuse, so fair warning. The film is a slow burn, so if that's your cup of tea, you'll quite possibly enjoy where the story takes you.
Happy Halloween.
I hate Halloween.
On Halloween night, experience 5 interwoven stories happening on the same block. An old man visited by a ghostly trick-or-treater, a high school principal leading a double life as a serial killer, a college virgin looking for the perfect man, a prank gone too far, and a couple finding out what happens when a jack-o'-lantern gets blown out before midnight. Now this is what I'd call a fun Halloween film, and it's the only horror film on this list I feel truly captures the essence of the holiday perfectly. Not only are the characters of each story interesting, but the narratives have a satirical nature to them that perfectly balanced with the horror elements, leaving you with a funny and scary film. Keep in mind, this did come out in 2007, so it can feel dated, but that's actually one of its charms. Since it's a sort of anthology, we need a crypt keeper, and the movie's version of the crypt keeper is a toddler named Sam that is genuinely terrifying. The acting is great all around, and the film knows when to keep the comedy at bay for the scares, filled with all sorts of ghouls and creatures, so if you're looking for something different that embodies the spirit of Halloween, you're gonna love this.
But you let them out. Evolution is a way of keeping things alive.
An insect will evolve to mimic its predator.
When an epidemic targeting children is caused by infected cockroaches, Dr. Susan Tyler develops a mutant breed of insect tasked with killing the disease-ridden roaches. 3 years later, people begin disappearing in subways and dark streets, while rumors of giant insects capable of mimicking men start to emerge. Mimic is an entertaining sci-fi horror that tackles the fear of mutation, its use of lighting and tension building with an almost constant claustrophobic setting of Manhattan and its underground manages to strike several nerves, instilling an uneasiness in the audience. The terrifying sound design adds to those elements in a major way, hearing the disturbing rattling of bugs in the background, and since it's a film by Guillermo del Toro, all the insect creatures are mostly practical and will leave a lasting impression in your mind. I feel like this is an underrated sci-fi horror that does have some issues but are vastly overshadowed by the film's craftsmanship. It is an intriguing story that has great performances to match with memorable characters, resulting in a tense watch that that'll make you think twice before killing an insect.
Mimic.
Have you ever heard of Candyman?
Candyman. Candyman.
While writing a thesis about local myths and legends, Helen Lyle learns about the Candyman, a hook-wielding killer whose name said in a mirror 5 times would precede with his arrival. Helen doesn't believe at first, but a string of murders in Cabrini Green begins to make her think that the Candyman may indeed be real. A lot of people know the legend of Candyman, but I don't feel like loads of them have actually seen the film, which is why I place it on this list. The intrigue is the main selling point for the film, that is a slow burn, using the mystery aspect to amplify the horror. Is it all in her head and his obsession driving her mad, or is it the Candyman toying with its next victim? The film does have a lot of social commentary about gentrification, as it is one of the main aspects the narrative revolves around, but it's not in your face like what we get nowadays. Till today, it remains an underrated classic with mesmerizing performances and great direction, adding a fresh take to the urban legend subgenre that essentially went down the tropes rabbit hole. You can feel the tension gradually build as the mystery unravels, and although it suffers from some mild pacing issues at times, remains a must-see for fans of horror, unlike the god-awful 2021 remake.
Candyman.
Now, is it me, or is it really quiet in here?
After the brutal murder of their friend, the group reunites for a hiking trip to honor his memory. When one of them gets injured, they decide to cut through the forest to shave off a couple of hours, but get caught up in a thunderstorm. Seeking shelter in an abandoned cabin, they begin to experience true terror when their darkest fears begin to come true. The Ritual is probably one of my favorite horror films in recent years because of its memorable characters, simple story, and incredible visual style, adding a new layer of fear to an overused location in the genre. The film's strength comes from the lead actors and the strain of the characters' relationships when they start being confronted with the demon in the forest, exponentially increasing the stakes in a brief moment. The cinematography and sound design constantly have you looking around the screen for anything hiding behind a tree, and the dream sequences in the forest are easily some of the highlights of the film. Now, the third act does shift in a direction some people might not be on board for, and this is where it falls into some tropes, leaning away from the survival horror aspects, but even then doesn't stumble to the point where it falls flat on its face, leaving you with a satisfying conclusion.
Hair, brown, eyes, gray.
While investigating the gruesome murder of a family, law enforcement comes across an unknown body buried in the basement. Jane Doe is transported to the coroner's office, who is asked by the police to run a late-night autopsy for a press release the following day. The father-son coroner team began examining the body as a storm approaches and eerie discoveries are made. Another criminally underrated film that takes one location screenwriting and horror to new heights. The Autopsy of Jane Doe is a slow burn mystery clocking in just under 90 minutes with great performances by the 3 leads that requires full attention to detail when watching. Not only does it make clever use of its environment to relay exposition, it also manages to give the audience an increasing sense of claustrophobia in the autopsy room. If you've played the mortuary assistant, it's basically that experience in film. This is a perfect watch for Halloween, with such an intriguing story unraveling as the corpse becomes dissected, ultimately leaving you feeling uneasy when the credits start to roll. The scares come from tension building and atmosphere, with a minimal use of score throughout, and although it has a few jump scares, they're all well earned. The film adds a new twist to a subgenre of horror that I can't name for fear of spoiling, of course, making it a unique watch till this day, until they make an actual adaptation of The Mortuary Assistant. A young woman discovers that her already booked rental home is occupied by a stranger. She eventually decides to stay the night, but quickly discovers that there's much more to worry about than the unexpected house guest. Barbarian wasn't planned on this list, but it came out a few days ago and it's here at number 3, so yeah, it's really good. I urge you to watch without knowing anything about it except what I told you, and don't even watch the trailer. This film is what subverting expectations should be, constantly taking horror tropes, building and deconstructing them in one of the smartest horror comedies I've seen in a very long time. Now, it's a horror comedy, but it isn't. You see, Barbarian's comedy comes from the absurdity of the situations and drastic plot shifts well into its second act. It's very hard to explain without spoilers, but the movie will basically have you watching like this. Barbarian's insane script is backed up by its direction that will have you in awe with visual trickery and top-notch sound design. Not only is it incredible filmmaking, the acting from Bill Skarsgård, Georgina Campbell, and Justin Long are noteworthy in a film that manages to actually bring something new to the table, revitalizing old ideas, and will probably become a cult classic down the line. The anxiety-inducing moments do their job, also incorporating themes of love, motherhood, abuse, and trauma in a satisfying way, and will almost constantly have you on the edge of your seat.
This is perfectly natural.
A documentary crew traveled to rural Thailand to interview a local shaman called Nim, who claims to be possessed by the spirit of a local goddess, inheriting it from her sister who converted to Christianity. She soon realizes that her nephew is showing signs of possession as well, and slowly begins to see that it's not of a local goddess, but possibly an entity much more sinister. The medium is filmed documentary style, but don't worry, it barely has shaky cam and all the tedious things that come with until the third act. The story unravels itself very slowly but does a great job of keeping constant tension, finally exploding with the arrival of the final act, where it falls into the conjuring trap of having an over-the-top showdown. The film feels like a modern-day version of The Exorcist within its first two acts, with amazing performances by the medium herself and the possessed girl. Narratively, the documentary aspect of the film does raise some issues when you remind yourself that there are cameramen filming this and they can probably do something to change the outcome of a situation. Nonetheless, at the end of the film you're left with a sense of dread, thinking about what you just watched. In a good way. The character of the medium is intriguing, as her inner struggle with her faith while having to perform an exorcism over the course of days leaves room for doubt and uncertainty that could have grave consequences. Even though it's a mockumentary format, the film boasts some pretty decent cinematography and a rural setting that helps the uneasiness settle in. Some of you may not enjoy how the final act rolls out because it doesn't fall in line with the usual exorcism and demon films we're used to, but I urge you to keep an open mind and enjoy this well-crafted South Asian horror flick. Soon after a Japanese stranger arrives in a rural Korean town, a mysterious disease begins to spread, resulting in several murders. Police officer Jong-gu is tasked with investigating the deaths, but rumors begin circulating that the stranger may be an evil entity wanting to wreak havoc on the sleepy mountain town. The Wailing is arguably one of, if not the most terrifying film I have ever seen, and is best going in completely blind. Clocking in at 156 minutes, the mystery is at the forefront of the film, focusing on telling a chilling story with horror elements rather than a straight-up horror film, which works massively to its advantage as you become almost immediately invested in the characters and plot. The film is perfectly paced and the immense runtime is virtually unfelt, with Oscar-worthy performances from our leading man and one of the best child performances in South Asian horror, up there with Kim Soo-an from Train to Busan. The Wailing is an eerie tale of exorcism, the devil, and murder, told in a beautifully directed way, coupled with increasingly disturbing imagery bound to stay with you for a few days after the viewing. Trust me. What makes the disturbing aspects of the film different from others is how the deaths and the devil-related elements are treated in a raw manner. Thoughts in the back of your mind arise that this could possibly be happening somewhere in the world right now. It all concludes in an epic finale, with the final 30 minutes becoming a literal heart-pounding experience as you fear for the characters, are filled with suspense, and are anxious about what might jump on screen to give you nightmares.
마음 단단히 먹어야 되네.
I hope you all enjoyed my recommendations and found something worthwhile to watch for Halloween, or anytime you're itching for a horror film. Thank you all for watching, do subscribe if you're new and enjoyed the video. Thank you once again for sticking around this long, and hopefully, I'll see you all next time.